This may very well be the most valuable lock-up garage in Britain, and this the most expensive tree. Its owner was offered the chance to name his price when these buildings were going up. He refused to sell, so they had to build around him. When the boom hit this place, several other people stood out against the development. Holding up progress, it was called. You can see the signs of their stubbornness dotted around the city centre like archaeological remains of an earlier age. It could be anywhere in the Western world, Kansas City, Montreal, Strasbourg or Turin, but it's Croydon, a suburban complex of 300,000 people that would be a city all its own if it were not so close to London. The process that transformed Croydon from a quiet suburban community with houses you could walk to the top of and a school with playing fields smack in the centre into this took just 10 years. And it explains why that little tree and lock-up garage and everyone else's property around here became as valuable overnight as if they'd discovered oil on it. There have been a number of programs about the inhumanity of new development and protests against high-rise housing and the building of more roads. What this one is trying to do is look again at how and why the decisions have been made to proceed with these massive changes. To test the notion that major redevelopment of city centres really offers all that is claimed in the way of benefits to everyone, and to try to relate it to some of the many other pressing problems still facing our cities: housing, traffic, bad public transport, the need for more jobs and amenities, and to see if the huge investment of finance and materials is justified. Is this really the best way to save our cities? To capture this argument, still going on, we've chosen a city whose council has been deciding what to do with its central area for the past 20 years, Cardiff. Roughly the same size as Croydon, it's about to embark on the largest redevelopment in Britain.
We ask Almighty God to preside over this meeting and fill us with his wisdom and the spirit of justice and charity, and pray for the peaceful, wise and successful development of our city in the future, through Christ our Lord.
Cardiff is the capital city of the Principality of Wales. Its civic centre sits proudly in a park full of statues, flanked by a museum, law courts and university, a 20th century echo of the grand tradition of town planning in Vienna, Paris and Berlin. On the other side of the castle, it is a city much like any other, with familiar urban problems. Housing growing scarcer, traffic that has choked its declining public transport, unemployment rising, especially among the young, and its major employer threatening to close, and no new industry in sight, all leading to a falling population for the first time in the city's history. Cardiff has pinned its hopes and a good deal of public money on a mammoth scheme of motorways, offices, shops and entertainment. It's done so in partnership with Ravenseft, the principal subsidiary of Land Securities, reputed to be the richest property company in the world. The new development is known as Centreplan.
The children of Cardiff are facing a future city which will rise from the fall of a condemned past and bring to the surface a way of new life, a way removed from disorder, a way of reaching some concrete expression of tomorrow, where building for tomorrow is a prime need today. In his far-seeing assessment of Cardiff, Professor Colin Buchanan estimates that by the year 2001, 200,000 more people could be involved in what is already a running street battle between man and a motorized army of man-eaters.
This just can't go on. The traffic, the crowds, the congestion, something has got to change soon, which is what our idea is all about. Cardiff is the capital city, and it needs new offices, new warehouses, new shops, new entertainment centre, new public buildings, a new concert hall. These are needs to be met.
And having assessed those needs,
having achieved that, to arrange them in some way which is, in environmental terms, in the way you walk about the place, as good as it could be and worthy of the city.
Consultant architect and town planner, Sir Hugh Wilson. Alderman Ronald Watkins, planning committee chairman.
I'll now ask Sir Hugh Wilson to go to the maps and explain the scheme to you.
This presentation for planning permission marks the end of a process that has taken Cardiff Council 20 years.
My Lord Mayor, Mr. Chairman, members of committees, I have the honour this afternoon to present to you the...
This is a joint meeting with the outgoing planning committee under Conservative control and the incoming Labour one due to take over in a month under local government reorganisation, and with the developers and the planning team.
Detailed working out of the elevations or of the malls, but I can say on behalf of my clients, and also speaking personally, that we do intend this new centre to be not just another shopping centre, just not more offices and entertainment, but a very important section of the central area of the capital city of Wales. And the character, the materials and design which we all intend to put into this will, we hope, make it worthy of that capital city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sir.
How much effect can you have, or can the Chief Planning Officer have, on the way the city looks and what happens in it?
Well, of course, the role of a planner has been changing a lot in the last 10 years. He was first of all concerned with the physical nature of the city, but more and more we realise that's tied up with the economic life of a city. And of course, more recently, I think that in fact both the physical life and the economic life depend on people and their social needs and their social requirements, so that planners have been drawn inexorably from physical planning into economic planning, and now I think much more into the needs of people at a social level.
Do you know what's happening to you at all, ladies, in this street?
No, nothing at all.
You know nothing at all?
Different kinds of rumours all the time.
And you've been in this state of not knowing for several years now, as I understand it.
Some says 5 years, some says 2 years.
But me, I don't believe in rumours. I'll wait until they comes and hit us first.
And where will you end up?
Well, I won't go in our state. We don't know where we're going.
We've got nowhere before.
Now, there's a popular misconception in the press and on the television that every developer goes along and he sees a piece of land and he then goes along and finds somebody that's going to rent it, and he then goes along and borrows the money and he puts up the building and it's all pre-let. Well, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. You have to play your instinct and your experience and be a little bit of a gambler.
Speculative development also built the old Cardiff. It was backed by profits from the mines in the valleys that sent coal and iron down to Cardiff and out from there to feed the rising demand of the Industrial Revolution. But as late as 1800, it was still a little market town of 2,000 people. But the opening of the new ship canal and railway link in 1840 gave it the momentum of a classic boom town. You can see the signs in the now blighted streets of Butte Town. Its docks, like most of the city, were built and owned by one man, the Marquis of Butte. The shipping drew a host of related trades. In the crumbling facades of the banks and consulates are the memories of what was once the largest coal exporting port in the world. The mosques and clubs are the legacy of Tiger Bay, the multinational community of sailors washed up in Cardiff and waiting for work, as ships switched from coal to oil in the 1920s. Though the city's focus moved upstream, Butte Town and the docks carried on, survived the slump, then the Blitz, but not the fatal touch of planning blight. The councillors from Tiger Bay had no use for nostalgia. They want a new road and redevelopment, though others plump for renovation. As the council argues, blight descends. Blight is a form of self-fulfilling prophecy. When you decide an area needs redoing because it's running down, the doubt that then hangs over its future ensures that it will run down even faster. Property values drop, so owners stop repairing and sell off as quickly as possible before the haggle over compensation for compulsory purchase becomes all that they can get. Butte Town now sits suspended, waiting for the road, every day more ripe for redevelopment, even if it wasn't before. Meanwhile, the heart of the city had moved back to the medieval and Roman centre, the market, the arcades, its flamboyant civic centre celebrating its success. And it worried terribly about the traffic. In the 20s, houses and shops were knocked down to widen streets because of it. Old photographs are reproduced to complain of it. Even the canal by the customs house was filled in to become a car park. In Cardiff, like so many other British towns and cities, traffic was to become the single most important force in forming the city's future. When Richard Dimbleby came to Cardiff in 1951, it was in the heady post-war atmosphere of change. Cardiff was in the running for growth and redevelopment.
Here we're to be met by Ted Glover, well-known Cardiff sportsman, and years ago a prominent member of the Glamorgan County cricket team. Today he's a city councillor. Welcome to Cardiff. Nice to see you again too, Ted. Looking very well, but I think you put a bit of weight on. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Come on. Go late. That's a strange name.
Most bomb-damaged cities, like Plymouth and Coventry, had official priority for their plans. But Cardiff had to win the normal government approval for its redevelopment scheme. Above all, it wanted the status of a capital city.
Cardiff is beautifully laid out with many fine buildings. The city is set by the sea and in the most beautiful countryside.
What about Cardiff as a great commercial city?
Well, who is better equipped to tell you about that than Sir Robert Webber?
Well, here in my office chair, I have the opportunity daily of watching the ebb and flow of affairs in this great city of Cardiff. And it is a great city. But one thing is constant.
What's that?
The initiative and drive of her citizens. Whatever the difficulties, and there have been many during the past 40 years, Cardiff meets them and maintains her supremacy.
What of the future?
Well, cities like Cardiff do not stand still. We have our great natural advantages, our docks and communications, our light and heavy industries of all kinds, and our skilled workmen and experienced executives.
In fact, everything that a capital city requires.
Yes. Cardiff is undoubtedly the center of Welsh life, not only commercially, but culturally as well. I understand your visit is only a brief one, but I'm certain you will discover sufficient to confirm everything I've told you.
By 1955, it had become a capital, but its plan was still in limbo, and so was its central area.
But we've a lot of ground to cover afterwards, so we'd better take the car.
In the 1960s, the office blocks it was waiting for sprouted just across the railway tracks from where the plan ended. Meanwhile, the dead hand of blight was gradually turning the central area into an informal kind of car park, peppered with shops, warehouses, and a few remaining houses. It was fears of increased traffic yet to come that led the government to return Cardiff's plans for the central area, with instructions to engage a team of experts who had apparently found the answer to the use of cars in cities. Colin Buchanan's report, Traffic in Towns, was to dominate city planning for a decade. In the official film of it, one of his partners, Anne McEwen, takes an area in London to demonstrate their solution.
We chose this block of central London north of Oxford Street as a typical heavily built-up area with a great variety of uses and acute traffic problems. Our first objective was to find out what advantages there would be from redeveloping the whole area completely. Let me give you an idea of what the area is like. 9,000 people live here. 50,000 people work here at a great variety of occupations, the main industry being the clothing trade. There is a big hospital, the Middlesex. Fitzroy Square forms a group of buildings of great architectural value, and there are several other streets of pleasing character. In the south is part of the great Oxford Street shopping centre. 115,000 shoppers may come here on a busy day, and it carries up to 3,000 vehicles an hour. We assumed that two of the boundary roads, Euston Road and Tottenham Court Road, were links in a primary distribution system for Greater London. The most efficient road pattern we could devise was this one of one-way hexagons. It allows traffic to flow smoothly, needing no traffic lights or policemen on point duty. The only way in which we could put back into the area all the accommodation and activities that are there now, and cater for all the traffic, was by inserting a completely new level for living, a building deck 20 feet above the present ground level. On this deck, the new buildings would arise, and here people would live and work and shop and enjoy themselves. But it would not be a solid deck. It would be liberally pierced to let in air and light to the traffic roads underneath, and to give vistas and views both for the drivers below and the pedestrians above. This arrangement would enable a far greater amount of the traffic to come very conveniently underneath the buildings, 10 times as much as can come today.
Total war on buildings. It would gain a lot, but surely there'd be losses too. There must be things that people would like to keep, even if they do make difficulties.
This is absolutely true. So we did a second exercise to show how buildings worth preserving in the area could be combined with new development. We have preserved Fitzroy Square, for example, and it results in a very interesting combination of old and new, of lower and upper levels. It's pretty obvious that we shall never get anything like this if we rebuild in penny packet installments. We need to tackle the comprehensive redevelopment of large areas, and this will call for a new kind of cooperation from the owners and developers of property.
There is, of course, plenty of evidence already to show what happens when all these interests do get together to build a new and better environment for people. There are, for example, our own new towns.
In 1964, Cardiff set up a planning department and then engaged Buchanan's team. 3 years and £300,000 later, it had produced 2 reports promising strong future growth for the city.
With the great expansion of Cardiff's population as you envisage it, how will you accommodate all the traffic that will come to shop in this new centre?
Well, of course, these highways are part of the measures needed for the accommodation of traffic, and growth of traffic is going to be very considerable, and there's no possible way of shrugging that one off. We don't think it's going to be possible, in fact, to meet all the future demands for the use of motor vehicles in the centre of Cardiff as they're going to arise at the end of the century. Something will have to be kept at arm's length. Broadly speaking, we think long period parking, that's all day parking, should be kept to the fringe of the central area.
While it spent most of its computer time on traffic surveys and analysis, its economic verdict was good. Jobs for both blue and white collar workers going up, and population too. This meant the plan for more shops and offices and more motorways and car parks to serve them was justified.
For greater convenience. And access to such car parks can be arranged off loop roads. There's parking, for instance, in the new shopping area under that building accessible off this loop road. And this can be done without having these central shops.
The essence of Buchanan's plan was decentralisation to keep the traffic down. The centre would be spread with new offices in the north and new shopping in the south, with lots of little car parks off the new roads, 36 miles of them. There would also be suburban shopping to take pressure off the centre.